Okay, now we're going to do something different here today. On to the next thing. We have to simplify, but now there's going to be some division involved, but you're not actually going to divide on a lot of it. X to the 8th, x to the 3rd, okay? X to the 8th, x to the 3rd. Divided. Now here's what you do when you have a division line. You're going to make two lines, and you circle the 8 and the 3 like you do before. So if I just look at the top, I just have a factor of x. That's all I have. If I look on the bottom, I have a factor of x. Well, inside outside doesn't need to be applied. So that's an 8, that's a 3. Now here's what you do. When you have an x here and an x here, you take out the smaller x and minus it from the other side. So 8 minus 3 is 5. And you can't figure that out, x to the 5th. Then I basically repeat the process, rinse and repeat. X to the 10th divided by x to the 2nd. So my 10th and my 2nd are my powers. So if I just look at the top of the line, I have a factor of x. Bottom, I have a factor of x. We have inside, outside does not need to be applied. Now, you're like, I thought you didn't write x down twice. Yeah, I do if I have a top and a bottom. Okay? See, in the previous lessons, we didn't have a top and bottom. It was all just on top. Oh, I write it twice if I have it on top and bottom. Now, if I have it twice on top, I'm not going to write it twice, or twice on bottom, I don't write it twice. But if I have a top and a bottom, I write it twice. Okay? So don't give me that. You said never to put it twice crap. Okay? Yeah, you got to listen. Okay? When I say that, I don't say I said because you did it before because you didn't have a top and a bottom. Now you do. So you get rid of the smaller one, minus it, x to the 8th. X to the 5th divided by x to the 2nd. Okay? 5, 2. Once again, you have x and x. You got to treat the top and bottom as though they were separate. So 5th and 2nd. Get rid of the smaller one, subtract it, you get 3. So x to the 3rd. Okay, m to the 8th divided by m to the 2nd. So I write m down, and on bottom, so I have an 8 and a 2. Get rid of the smaller one. 8 minus 2 is 6, so m to the 6th. Those are easy, pretty much a walk. Now it's going to get a little tougher. Well, there's the next one. That's pretty easy. Okay. X to the 16th divided by x to the 2nd. Okay. So the only factor you got on top is x. You have 16th power and a 2nd power. Only factor you got on bottom is x. So you got a 16 and a 2. No inside, outside. Don't have to do it. Cross out the bottom, minus 2, and you get 14. So that's x to the power of 14. Alright, now the next problem is more complex. Okay, I'm still making the two lines. We have a parentheses, and inside you have 5x to the 3rd power, y to the 4th power, parentheses closes, and you have a 2nd power. Times, and you have a 7 divided by x to the 4th. Now when you have the divided operator in this problem, here's what you're going to circle your powers: 3, 4, 2, and 4. All of them. Now, 5 and x is times, x and y is times, y and 7's times, but then 7 and x is divided by. When you see divided with all this time stuff, you extend the division line so it goes through the whole problem. Okay? Now you have a top and a bottom. Just look at the top. You have a 5, x, y, and 7, all different, so 5 times x times y times 7. Now on the bottom you just have an x. Okay. Now let's figure out the top. So 5 to the 1 in parentheses, so inside outside. 1 times 2 is 2. X to the 3rd, that's on top, inside outside. 3 times 2 is 6. Y is to the 4th, that's on top. 4 times 2 is 8. And then 7 is to the 1st, but I don't have to do inside outside, it's just to the 1st. Now the x factor on bottom, it's just a fourth. You don't have to do inside outside. Now before you start going over here, look at your bottom. You have an x. Do you have an x on top to go with it? You do. So x6, x fourth. These two here. You cross out your smaller and subtract that exponent from the x that's on top. 6 minus 4 is 2. So we have 5 to the second, x to the second, that's a 2, y to the 8th, 7 to the first. Well, I can simplify the 5 to the second and the 7 to the first. We can't simplify x second, y 8th. So 5 to the second, that would be 5 times 5. 7 to the first is just 7. So 5 times 5 is 25. 7 to the first is just 7. So this is replaced with 25, and this is replaced with 7, okay? Then times x to the second times y to the 8th, okay? Now, is there anything there you can multiply? I think there is. 25 times 7, okay? 25 times 7 is 175. So that's the answer. 175 times x to the second times y to the 8th. Okay, next problem. We got a parentheses. Inside we have a division line. On top of the division line we have 8x to the third, y to the second. Under the division line we have 5xy. And then a second outside. Okay? Now, remember, you treat the bottom and the top separately. So your exponents are a third, a second, and a second. You'll put some first powers in where needed. So on top, you got 8 times x times y. On bottom, you have 5 times x times y. Now, just talk about the top first. You have 8 times x times y. Now, what do you have in the denominator on bottom? You have 5 times x times y. Now you have a top and a bottom to do. So 8's to the first, but it's into the parentheses. All this crap needs to be inside outsided with the 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. Now, x third, inside outside, 3 times 2 is 6. And then inside outside with your y, 2 times 2 is 4. Now your bottom, 5 is to the 1. And you got to inside outside it. 1 times 2 is 2. X is to the 1, inside outside, 1 times 2 is 2. Y, inside outside, 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, now you got to look at your bottom factors. Do you have a 5 on top to go with the 1 on bottom? You don't. Okay, so that stays. Do you have an x to go? Yeah, you do. So you cross out the smaller x and subtract it from the x on top, and that's x to the fourth. Okay, you got a y to go with the 1 on bottom? You do. Okay, so you take out the smaller one, subtract it from top, and that's 2. Okay, so this is all we have. Now look at on top. 8 to the second is the only one you can simplify on top. It's 8 times 8. That would be 64. So that's going to be 64 times x to the fourth times y to the second. Those are trailers. Now go to the bottom. 5 to the second can be simplified. 5 times 5. You can't multiply anything here. It's 25. Now what do you do now? Nothing. That's simplified. You don't times those because you just leave it as a fraction. Okay, next problem. We have a parentheses. Inside you have 6z. Underneath it you have 7y. You have a fourth power outside. Then you have a parentheses with y to the third. Okay. Now, if you're like, well, this is kind of weird, Hermson, you don't have anything. If you have a parentheses, you'll want to put a 1 outside it right away. Okay. Now, if you have two separate fractions, it doesn't matter. If it's multiplication, which it is, it's always going to be, for now, multiplication, you just extend the line. Okay, you make it a whole problem. Okay, so now just let's do the top and bottom. You have 6 times z times y. So 6 times z times y. Then on bottom we have 7 times y and then times 2. So 7 times y times 2. Okay, so 6, you got a 1, but it's in parentheses, inside, outside. 1 times 4 is 4. Now z to the 1, you got to do inside, outside. 1 times 4 is 4. Then I go to y, 3 times 1 is 3. Now I move to my bottom. 7 to the 1. 1 times 4, that's, you still got to inside, outside the bottom if the bottom's in parentheses. Still with the 4. 1 times 4 is 4. Y, you put a first power on the y, that's still in parentheses. 1 times 4 is 4. Then 2, okay, that's a 1, inside, outside. 1 times 1 is 1. Really, you didn't have to inside, outside that, but just do it to get in the habit. Okay, now we got to cross out what we can. 7, do you have that on top? You don't, so that's staying. Y, do you have that on top? Yes, you do. But interesting thing is the y, the smaller exponent's on top. So we cross this one out and minus 3 on bottom. So 4 minus 3 is 1 down here though. Okay. And then 2, you don't have that on top. So let's talk about the top. 6 to the 4th, z to the 4th. The y's gone. So 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, that's 1,296. So we write that down. And then the z we can't simplify. Anything you can multiply there? Nope. 7 to the 4th can be simplified. The y to the 1st can't be. The 2 to the 1st can be. So 7 to the 4th. You got the top done, now you do the bottom. That's 2,401. Times, and I have another one I can simplify with the 2 to the 1st. That would be just 2 though. And then we use the variable as the trailer, times y to the 1. Now, is there anything on bottom you can multiply? Yeah, you can multiply 2,401 times 2, okay? $4,802. And you leave that fraction the way it is. Okay, next problem. I got 4 more. Fractions there, 6 to the 3rd times 6 to the 2nd divided by 6 to the 3rd. Fraction line, 6/3 times 6 to the 2nd on top, then underneath 6 to the 3rd. Okay, let's talk about the top. 3rd and a 2nd and a 3rd. So top, you got a factor of 6 and a factor of 6. So you just write the 6 down once, and on bottom, you just have the factor of 6. Write the factors you have on top and on bottom. If the factor appears twice on top, write it once. But on bottom's like a totally different problem. So 6. You got 3, you got 2 factors of 6. So you start with the one on the left. You got a 3rd, not in parentheses, so it's just a 3. Plus, you got another factor of 6 with a 2. 3 plus 2 makes 5. So it's 6 to the 5th. That says 6 to the 5th. Then at bottom you just got the 1 6 and it's to the 3rd. You don't have to do inside outside because there's no parentheses. You just write the exponents that are given. Now, you got 6 on bottom. You have it on top. You do. You get rid of it then. And then you subtract 3 from the 5. 5 minus 3 is 2. So after all that song and dance, we have 6 to the 2nd. That's all you got. 6 to the 2nd. 6 to the 2nd means 6 times 6, and that's 36. Okay, so that's your answer. That's all you end up with. Okay, next one, I got a parentheses. Inside, we have a division line. Top and bottom are both in the parentheses. You have 7x, y on bottom, and after the parentheses, you have a 3rd power. Then we have a times dot, then a parentheses. Inside you have another division line, and on top of that you have 4x to the 3rd with y, and on bottom you have x. After it's closed, you have a second power. Okay, so write that down. You can snapshot it. That's a third power, and all that. Or you can look on the doc and just write it down. It ain't hard. Okay, now remember what I said. When you have times with two fractions, you just combine it into one. Now top, third, second. So the factor is 7 times x times 4 times x times y. So 7 times x times 4 times x times y. So all I need to write is 7 times x times 4 times y. I don't need to repeat the x. Okay, now bottom we have y and x. And you're like, why are you writing x and y down here? Because they're on bottom, okay? So 7. So 7 to the first, that's inside, outside, that's a 3. You're just looking on top first. X's, there's two x factors on top. So the one on the left is to the first, 1 times 3 is 3. Plus, my other x factors to the 3, you got to do inside, outside with that. 3 times 2 is 6. So 3 plus 6 is 9. You want to scribble it out nice, or erase it if you want. Then 4. 4 to the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Then the y on top is to the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Now the top set. Now go to the bottom. The factor of y on bottom 1, but the parentheses is around that, so you got to do inside, outside. 1 times 3 is 3. Then x is to the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Now cross out what you can. You have a y. You got a y on top? Sure. You get rid of the smaller one. Subtract it on the other side. And 3 minus 2 is 1. So we have y to the 1 power. I'm going to put the 1 right there. X. Do you have that on top? Yeah, you do. X9. Compare them. This is the smaller one. 9 minus 2 is 7. So let's now simplify what we can on our top. 7 to the third times x to the 7th times 4 to the 2nd. So 7 to the third and 4 to the 2nd, we can simplify those. Because 7 to the third is 7 times 7 times 7, and 4 to the 2nd is 4 times 4. So that is 343, and that's 16. So you have 343 times 16. And then times x to the 7. Now on bottom we just got y to the first. We cannot, oh by the way, on top, could you have anything you can multiply? Yeah, you can times those. Sorry, I jumped to the bottom before I had my top simplified. 5,488. Okay, now on, oh, don't circle it. God! Y to the first needs to be written down here. Now that's the answer. Okay, sorry. See, I forgot. Okay, next one, I got a fraction. Now, I have a parentheses just on top, and I have 6a to the third and b inside, and then a fourth outside. Now, on bottom, I don't have the parentheses. I just have the a to the fifth. So inside, outside only has to be applied up here, not down here. So, on top, you got, here's your powers, 3 and 4, 6 times a times b, easy enough. No repeated factors on top. And on bottom, we just have the 5, so a is the only factor. Okay, so the 6 to the 1, inside, outside has to be done on the top. 1 times 4 is 4. Then a, 3 times 4 is 12. Then b, 1 times 4 is 4. That's the end. And the a is just to the fifth. No, you don't do inside, outside, because the parentheses is just on top. Anything on the bottom, I don't have to do inside, outside. I just drop the exponent. Now, can you cross out a's? You have that on top. You do. So get rid of your smaller a. Minus 5. 12 minus 5 is 7. So we end up with just a top. The bottom, we don't have anything. So 6 to the 4th, a to the 7th, b to the 4th. I can figure out 6 to the 4th. That's 6 times 6 times 6 times 6. That ends up being equal to 1,296. Then a to the 7th and b to the 4th, those kind of just are trailers. Anything you can multiply? Nope. Okay, that's the end. Okay, last problem. We have a parentheses inside. You have a division line inside the parentheses. 8a to the fourth on top with b on bottom. And then the parentheses closes, you have a second outside. So all that's in parentheses, inside, outsides with the whole everything in there. Times, and then another parentheses with a division line, and you have a to the second and b to the second with a second power outside. A second on top, b second on bottom with a second outside. So remember, you make that one whole division line, and then it's a single product. You can simplify. So on top, we got a fourth power, a second power, a second power, and a second power. So that leaves us with 8 times a times a. So it's just 8 times a. I don't want to write a twice on top. Now, let's look at our bottom. We have a b and a b to the second. So all I have is b. I don't write b down twice, okay? You don't write the letter twice on one side of the line, okay? Now when it goes opposite you can, but yeah. Okay, so on top I got 8a and a. So let's talk about our 8. 1 times 2 is 2, inside, outside. Then there's 2a factors. Start with the one on the left. 4 times 2 is 8. You have to do inside, outside, 4 times 2. Plus, then the other a, 2 times 2 is 4. So that's 8 plus 4. If it's in parentheses, you got to do inside, outside. Now go to the bottom. The top's done. Now just look on bottom. You got b. How many factors of b do you have? You have 2. So start with the one on the left. So 1 times 2 is 2 plus 2 times 2 is 4. Inside, outside has to be done. The inside, outside times. So 2 plus 4 is 6. Okay, you got b to the 6 on bottom. Do you have that on top? Any b's on top? No, you don't. You can't cross out anything then. Okay. So on top, a to the second, a to the 12th. You can simplify a to the second. That's 8 times 8. That would be 64. A to the 12th cannot be simplified, so I can't multiply anything on top. And on bottom, I can't even simplify. It's just b to the 6th. Okay, that's my end. 64 times a to the 12th over b to the 6th. You leave it as a fraction.